Hey, what's up? I'm Mike Squires, and this is the Couchers Podcast with episode number 128. And my guest, Anthony Cartinella of Black 35 Guitars out of Red Bank, New Jersey. Anthony's been building guitars under the Black 35 name for about 5.5 years, I think, if I got my math right. And just recently started making pedal boards using the same sort of distressed finish look that are very, very cool. You should check them out, black35guitars.com. We had a great time talking. Right off the bat, I learned that he's a music teacher at a middle school, and I kind of hammered him about that stuff for a while because it's super interesting, and I love public school music programs. So I hope that you enjoy this conversation just as much as I did. Also, like I said, go check out his website. He's making a bunch of very cool classic style designs and distressed finishes and, interesting. There's some really cool wood burned top guitars, and they're all one-off custom guitars. So there's no production model, right? So get in touch with him, build your dream guitar. Hey, if you're enjoying the Couchers podcast, please go support at patreon.com/couchriffs. We're making videos every couple, 2-3 weeks. We're putting out a new performance video. There's some very cool stuff coming up featuring a lot of people that you absolutely recognize. Maybe some people you don't, but that's fun, isn't it? Patreon.com/couchriffs. There's a bunch of exclusive merch over there at certain tiers. You can also download the audio that we make, all these cover songs that are available there for people who support. So thank you to folks who are over there doing that already. I really appreciate it. It makes this podcast and the videos possible. Also, thank you to our friends, River City Guitars in Spokane, Washington. River City Guitars is a small but mighty guitar store specializing in vintage, used, and generally super cool stuff, boutique-y stuff. And my man Bobby over there is hustling every day of his life, making sure he's got the coolest stuff in the shop. If you have a used piece, vintage or used piece that you want to sell, maybe you're trying to, drum up some scratch for Christmas, get a hold of Bobby. You can get a hold of him at 509-818-7693 or shoot him an email at sales.rivercityguitars@gmail.com. I've known Bobby for years now. We met through doing business. And if you meet someone through business and can maintain a friendship through that, you know they're a good person, right? That's what I think. Hey, so every week I pick something off their website, and since Black 35 started building pedal boards, I figured I'd pick a pedal. Now, this is an interesting pedal. I'm a fan of tremolo. This is the Seymour Duncan Shapeshifter Tremolo. This is a great Christmas gift too, because it's not a high dollar. This is $115. This thing is super versatile, so it's got your tap tempo, so you can tap it in or dial it in. It's got a depth shape, so you can dial in how the wave fades in and out, and the waveform itself. Super cool tremolo pedal. $115, and they're taking offers because they're reasonable people, So buy yourself something for Christmas, or buy that someone special guitar player a nice little gift for Christmas, right? rivercityguitars.com. Thank you guys for supporting now and forever. Those guys they're very good folks. All right. I hope that you enjoy this episode as much as I did. I hope you have a nice Thanksgiving if you're celebrating. Wear a mask. Don't forget the golden rule, If everyone operated under the golden rule, imagine what a great place this would be. Planet Earth, huh? Everybody getting along, not being a dick. Yes. Can you hear me? You can't hear me. You can hear me.
I can hear you now.
It's always a fucking miracle. How are
Can you
you?
hear me okay?
Huh?
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great. Yeah. Oh, you got a nice little room for yourself. I really got to work on my room here.
You had to step it up.
The problem with my little room is that it's the room that you walk into when you walk into the house. It's
Yeah.
the first room that you walk into. So it's just
It's
kind
like
of
your foyer is your studio.
yeah, exactly.
Cool, man.
Precisely.
It's good meeting you, dude.
Yeah, good to meet you too. What's your zippy say there?
Pressure cracks.
What is that?
I built a guitar for a dude a few years back in California. It was his band, so they got
Oh,
some like
nice.
new merchants, so he sent it to me. So
Nice.
yeah,
Nice.
I always like getting. I always am sending guys out stuff. It's always nice to get some stuff reciprocated.
That is nice.
Yeah.
I had to look up Red Bank. I had to look where that is, and it's not very far from the city at all, is it?
No, not really. I actually teach up in Linden, so I'm only about 15, 20 minutes outside of New York, and Red Bank is down the shore, but I mean probably outside the city is probably about 45 minutes.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
what do you teach?
What's up?
What do you teach?
Music. Yeah.
Uh, at like a school?
Yeah. I teach. I've been teaching concert band for the last. I taught concert band and musical theater for years. This is my 22nd year teaching, but concert band is what I teach in
Oh,
Linden.
amazing.
Yeah, man.
At what school level?
Middle school.
Amazing.
Yeah. Like regular job.
That's great. Here's the thing. I was in school band, and it was a thing that saved my life. Probably as I got older, it was like that was my entryway into music. That was the thing that taught me, like, oh, I can play music.
Yeah,
That's
for
so
sure.
cool. Are there
Yeah.
kids that are playing guitars there?
What's up?
Are there kids that are playing guitar, show interest in guitar?
I teach in Linden, which is it's an urban town. There's not like a lot of interest at the middle school level with kids who want to play guitar.
Yeah.
They do have a really good like guitar ensemble with the high school.
Yeah.
Right now, everything is kind of wacky because of COVID and the
Sure.
zombie apocalypse we're in. But whatchamacallit? Yeah, I mean, there's some kids in there. My big thing is concert band, though. Yeah, I've been teaching concert band for this is my 22nd year.
So where obviously you have a degree to teach music.
Yeah, well, I actually have 3 degrees. I'm a geek. I have an undergrad in music education and percussion performance. Percussion's my main instrument. And then I have 2 other master's degrees. I have one in education and the other one's in educational administration and supervision from Seton Hall.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, it's no wonder you have a side hustle because you're a teacher and you're notoriously underappreciated by. It's a public school.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
And it's nice
right
too.
here.
Where I teach is the town I grew up in.
Oh,
So.
amazing! Really?
Yep.
Have you taught any kids of people you went to school with?
Yeah, I've had a number of students who I went to school with their parents or family members. I mean, a bunch of those over the years. And then what gets really weird is when I have some of my students who now have gone into being music educators, which is cool. So I have there's 2 students in Linden right now who are they're not students, they're teachers. They're my colleagues, but they were kids who I taught in like marching band in middle school and high school.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's cool.
The color on the back of your hand doesn't seem more than 22 years old. Unless you have magic skin. I have magic skin and it stays very, very bright. What was that like when you showed up to school with a hand tattoo? Were they?
Oh, with some job stoppers?
Yeah.
I mean, I got them all over my hands.
I mean, you're technically
you won't be able
unemployable,
to see it
right?
on the podcast, but you can see it.
Yeah.
whatchamacallit. Is this like rolling for the
Oh, we're
podcast?
going, man. Yeah, we're
Oh, okay,
talking.
cool. That's what I like hearing. That's cool. I like it that way. No, nothing. I always like started having like the tattoos and stuff like that, and myself and a couple buddies of mine who I taught with, we would be more tattooed. I'm I would say I'm probably the most tattooed guy in my district. So out of like 1,600 employees, I'm probably the most tattooed.
Right.
But I'm cool with that. And you know what? It's like I said, with a town like with with Linden being an urban town, I always felt that a lot of our parents and families were very down to earth, but also because of where it is, I always felt like more parents would be more prone to come to talk to me in the hallway if
Right.
they saw me tattooed because they came in and they were tattooed, feeling a little bit more comfortable as opposed to walking up to a suit to ask a question about school or their kids or stuff like that. So I always felt that kind of like unwritten, a parent walks in the office and looks around and there's two people they could talk to, a lot of times they would talk to me, and, even with my students, I'm, like very just real and down to earth with my kids.
That's
They're
cool.
they're great kids. They're tough, and I like tough kids because for a lot of my students, their only semblance of structure is 8 to 3 is when we were in regular session. A lot of times that was the only time a lot of these kids had like a hot meal, some semblance of structure to their day, people around who are really taking care of them. I mean, not all the kids, but I've heard some heartbreaking stories over the years. That's for sure.
I mean, that's how it was for me at school. I got free, I went to school, got free breakfast, got free lunch,
Yeah.
got a loaner instrument. I think my mom hustled me a trumpet from a rental place and never paid them, at one point, unfortunately, Um, but yeah, it was a real safe place for me as a kid. So, man, I applaud you for that. I have a bunch of more questions about that. I hope that you don't mind that I want to ask you a bunch of
No,
shit about
no,
that.
not at all. Not at all.
So here's something interesting. I have often said that drummer and did you grow up in the go in school music program as well?
I'm sorry, what was that?
You grew up in music school program as well?
Yeah, it's funny because when I was younger, meaning like, middle school, that's kind of what I got when I got turned on to music. Um, and when I was in middle school, like seventh and eighth grade was like really a turning point for me. At that time is when I discovered, like a lot more of AC/DC
Sure.
and Metallica, and those two bands were just like iconic to me. They still are to this day. And even with, a band like Metallica then turned me on to Danzig, Misfits, Sam Hain, and then it just kind of blew up from there. Um, it's funny, when I was in middle school, I played in band, but band wasn't really like I felt like my place to be. Orchestra was,
Right.
because we had an orchestra director. Her name was Miss Lemansky. She looked like friggin' Ace Frehley. And she was like just wacky. She wasn't writing music for the kids. She was just writing all kinds of shorthand, like fingering tabs for kids. But we were playing like Van Halen and Guns N' Roses, and we were playing some of these tunes in like her version of like an orchestral version of it. So I got to play drum set and like, get into it with like playing with like other like-minded weirdos like myself. They're like, oh cool, we're gonna do Sweet Child of Mine, and
Right.
there's like me on drums, and there's like two bass guitars and like three kids trying to play piano and synthesizers, all that kind of wacky stuff. But yeah, I was always into it. I was always a band geek, and then or orchestra at that time. And then when I went to the high school, I got really into the marching band program.
Oh,
Like
were you in
totally
drum
got bit
corps?
by the bug with marching band. And marching band and drum and bugle corps, and it's just totally my band director, who was my band director in high school and then became like my supervisor when I started teaching. And ironically enough, like his son is a supervisor now, and him and I are like brothers, like we grew up together. But when I went to high school and got involved with marching band, that was a game changer. And it totally made me like 110% like, I want to be a music teacher. This guy's got a friggin' office. He's got a coffee maker. He's got a computer before anyone else had computers. I was like, I want to be a band director. And I kind of just went with it from there. But yeah, marching band for me was definitely like, I was total like band geek 101. Loved it. I was drumming. I was taking drum lessons with a number of different dudes. And then did drum corps and all that stuff. It's funny because that's all my background is, all percussion. When I've had other guys talk to me in like various interviews or, you know, reach out to me with stuff, and they're like, oh, well, when you were playing guitar, like when you were younger and stuff like that. I was like, bro, I didn't get a guitar until much later in life. I had no interest in guitar when I was younger.
I think the drum corps is the fucking coolest thing, man.
Yeah, it was rad.
It is so. I mean, how many drummers are there? I mean, there's how many people playing snare?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, with drum corps, I did senior corps first. I marched in this corps called the Skyliners, and then I did junior corps. I marched in the Crossmen, and like those corps, like the junior corps, there'd be like 128 at that time, 128 members of the group between brass players, percussion, whatever. I mean, when I marched, I mean, we had like 9 snares, 5 bass, 5 quads, you know, and
it's
like,
so crazy because that many people, like, you know, there's a little bit of a time delay from the front row to the back row.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
And so getting your heels to click down in time and march in time is crucial.
Yeah.
Otherwise you're a train wreck.
Yeah. And it was totally, you know, like, it's funny that you even mentioned that with like the time delay, because that's like a whole other beast that you need to learn. Like some guys think, hey, I'm playing in a band and it's me and 3 other guys. You know, I got a guitar, bass, drummer, and let's say a guy singing or something like that. And it's like, you're trying to keep that quartet tight and working together. And it's like, imagine trying to have these trumpets that are on like the front sideline playing a part, lining up with percussion that's past the back hash, and all trying to jive together with a conductor and make it line up right and run all over the friggin' field. It was pretty intense.
It's way more intense than any technical rock band will ever be. I don't care if it's Yes or Dream Theater or whatever, Rush. Drum corps, drum and bugle corps is the most intense thing that I've ever seen live.
Yeah, it's really cool too to see how much it evolved. Like you could go online now and go on YouTube and pull up videos, and they make like these high-tech like ESPN style documentaries on corps like the Blue Devils and the Santa Clara Vanguard and like the Carolina Crown, and they really like the activity changed so much. I mean, I'm 45 and I marched and I aged out when I was 21, and then continued to teach marching band as, you know, a music educator in various schools and stuff. But the activity evolved so much on so many levels, and technology really brought it to a totally different level. Like when I was younger, if you want to learn, I mean, the same thing applies to even, let's say, guitar players. Like if you go back 25 years, 20 years, you want to learn a lick. You had you kind of had the option to like listen to a record
over and over.
Or like you're trying to figure it out and hope that you can hear it. Or if you're fortunate, your family had some money and you had a private teacher. That was pretty much it. Now you could go on YouTube and be like, how do I play this part? You know, and it's whatever instrument, and you could find, you know, 100 guys out there playing, whatever song you want to learn, and you could read it with the music, with the tab, with the backing track, and the same thing with drum corps, same thing with, playing, guitar, woodwind, or brass. It's crazy how much it's evolved.
I mean, it's, technology has revolutionized everything, right? I mean, I looked
Yeah.
at YouTube today when I changed the light bulb in my car, the headlight.
Yeah.
I've used it when I've changed out my hot water heater.
Yep.
I've done a ton of work on my old cars that way. And you can learn you could learn how to re-edge a drum. What do you call that?
Absolutely.
You could learn how to build a guitar. You could learn everything.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, you could do.
It might not be great instruction.
Yeah, I mean, it depends who it is. When you're like, hey, this is Johnny Bob and my wife, and we're going to learn how to put these pipes on my Harley, and I swear to God, I watched a video for one of my Harleys, and I was like, put new pipes on, and I literally found like this dude and his wife in like Tennessee doing this half an hour video, and I'm out there laying on the ground watching the video on my phone and installing these pipes.
Right.
It's crazy.
I'm trying to think. I mean, I surely swapped some parts out on my old Road King that way.
Nice.
Yeah, it's almost like a go-to.
Yeah. And I feel like for kids today and adults in general, you just have so much of this stuff. They have a commercial on TV about like friggin' TikTok, and I don't do anything with TikTok or any of that kind of stuff. And, but you got people like, they'll go on there. It's like, hey, I learned how to make this and eat this food and prepare this and do that. Same thing with YouTube. You could go on there and you just get like all the knowledge and know-how is right there to do virtually anything. It's crazy compared to years ago.
I guess you probably have a better exposure to whatever the new stuff is than I ever will, because you're around young people all the time.
Yeah, it's funny because the kids and even my own children, they're sometimes like light years ahead of you.
Right.
Like I'll have a problem with my phone. I'm like, oh, what is this? What is this? And like my kid take it, be like, oh, it's this, and they're done. They just kind of tap in, they're good to go. It's like, wow, like I have no idea, because that's like their world,
Right.
Which is interesting.
And they don't know how to put a record on the turntable, though.
My kids do.
That's good. You're a good father.
I definitely make sure, because then my one daughter will steal some of my stuff. I'll be like, where are these albums? And like she'll take like some eclectic stuff and get out of here. I'm like, what are you doing?
That's great.
But it's funny with that. But
so I have often said, so my grade school and junior high band teacher was also primarily a drummer.
Yeah.
And he was great. He had he came with his own set of issues. He was a Vietnam vet and would sometimes lose his cool and throw chalk at us.
Nice.
We had a great band
He
room.
cared.
It was like
he cared.
But he could really play the kit, man. It was like, to watch him play was wondrous. But I've often said that drummers make the best engineers and producers, because they are often, sitting back, delivering the rhythmic pulse while whatever melodic music is happening, right?
Sure.
Do you think that translates to instructing as well?
You know what? I think part of it does, because I feel that I think drummers, just like bass guitar players that are always the pun of a lot of jokes, there's like a shared common ground that they look at things differently when running an ensemble. Whether it's a small group or a symphonic orchestra, a different way to approach where your ensemble needs to be listening and where they need to be hearing. Because I always explain to my students, like, there's a difference between hearing and listening. Just like I always tell my students, I had a teacher many years ago that, made it very clear. It's like when you're in front of a group conducting, you need to realize that there's a time to lead and there's a time to get the hell out of their way. If that group is going at a certain velocity, like, go, you got to hang in there. And I feel that like percussionists especially have a better sense of sometimes being able to hold that together, whether the group is going and going and going. You know, we've all played something where it started getting a lot faster than you're used to, or it's dragging ass and it's a lot slower. I feel like drummers have a different internal clock to make sure that things are going in the right direction, and a little bit better to kind of craft it back together.
Maybe also because drummers inherently aren't just, I mean, unless you're in a drum corps, drum line or something, you're playing a snare or you're just playing a bass drum or whatever. If you're playing a trap kit, you know, you're using 4 limbs and playing multiple, instruments really.
Yeah.
And nobody else in the band is.
Yeah, true.
You know, I played the trumpet. That was...
Yeah.
It was, I feel like I kind of picked the easiest thing.
And even then, it's funny because with the real little kids, they look at the trumpet, and the first thing that a little kid mean like an elementary school student who never played before, who's looking at all the shiny new instruments they want to play. And they look at the trumpet, and the first thing that kid thinks is that's got to be easy because there's only 3 buttons.
That's what I thought.
You know, and then you try and explain to them, well, yes, there's only 3 buttons, but those valves, depending on what you're doing with your mouth, your embouchure, and how fast or light or tight you're blowing your air. I was like, that's how you're changing all those notes that you'd be playing. Then they're like, oh, that's a lot harder than I thought. It's like, yeah, it is.
So can you get through in all of the orchestral instruments? Can you kind of get by on all of them?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can play everything. The only thing I suck at is the flute.
Right.
I'll have a kid like, I want to play the flute. I was like, I think you should play sax.
Yeah.
You should play clarinet. Yeah, I play everything. I mean, in college, you know, it's funny because when you go to college for music education, you'll take like a half semester class on, let's say, woodwinds, if you're not a woodwind major. So it's like I had like just a handful of core hours to learn how to play these instruments. And then you start teaching.
Right.
And then you realize, oh shit, like I got to figure out how to play this. But what happens is over time and by osmosis, you start getting better and you start seeing tendencies and the habits to improve yourself as well as your students. You know, it's really good. Like it's almost trial by fire. I remember the very first year I started teaching, I taught a boot in high school up in like Northwest Jersey, and I did drum corps, and I arranged percussion and taught all these drum lines that were kicking everyone's ass and everything. So I was like, yeah, like I was ready to go. My first real paycheck, my first real gig. And you start doing that, and I'll have a kid like playing bass clarinet, like, Mr. C, how do I play this note? And I'm like, and I'm like scrambling through like a little cheat book, like trying to figure it out. And then I go home and I'm like, I can't do that. I was like, I look like an asshole. And then you got to kind of like go back to the drawing board and be like, okay, I need to learn this. I need to learn these. And you put in some, sweat equity into it and you get better. And then I always felt that when I taught elementary and middle school kids, especially elementary school, like I would play with those kids all the time. It's like, hey, it's a saxophone lesson. I'm going to play sax with the kids. Clarinet lesson. I'm going to play a clarinet with the kids. And the more and more I played, the better and better I got. So that got me proficient. Same thing with orchestral instruments, playing violin, viola, cello, bass. You learn these things from just keep doing it.
And
you have to.
Are there bowed instruments in your orchestra as well?
I don't teach orchestra,
right.
But I taught orchestra in the at the elementary level.
Yeah, before. That's tricky.
It is. It's tough. And the guy who, my colleague, my buddy John, who teaches the orchestra at both our middle schools, is just a phenomenal teacher. He's very well rounded. He's a phenomenal piano player. A lot of fun to work with, but I mean, he has those kids doing a great job. Like he has these kids, they sit down, they got their little tuners on their stand. They're sitting there, they're fine tuning their violins. They're getting ready for the day. Where years ago, the kids, you'd spend 3/4 of your lesson walking around trying to like tune their violins and violas,
Right.
and that's a whole other beast too, just the pegs. And if you're not dealing with good quality instruments, the pegs aren't sticking, and, stuff's getting all kinds of wonky out of tune. It's a nightmare.
So let me ask you this. Do you think that kids are advancing more quickly musically today than they were 25 years ago, in the same way that kids advance in with other things like sports, and like, is everything more elevated because we have exposure to, like maybe big brothers or big sisters, or just,
Yeah.
the greats that came before?
Um, Honestly, I mean, I really think that students, it's a tough question to answer, because honestly, I feel that students finding performing arts stuff as a whole, instruments as a whole, going back, let's say 20 years
Yeah.
or 25 years, I feel like those students, if they were really, I think if a kid wants to get good at it, they're going to get good at it and they're going to excel.
Right.
If that kid wants to excel today, they have so many resources at their disposal to make them better
Right.
than those kids back then. I think the biggest difference, though, with kids today as opposed to kids 20, 25 years ago, the kids today have so much on their plate.
Right.
You know what I mean? They have so much on their plate. So they're like, hey, I play the French horn, but I'm also on the lacrosse team, and I'm also in this club, and I'm also doing this. And then I'm making these videos with my friends, and like they're going in so many directions, where years ago I felt like it was more honed in, where, hey, I play baseball this time of year, and then I work on my trumpet the rest of the time of year. It's like now it's like the kids have so much going on. I feel like it kind of, prohibits them from getting to the level that they really could get to.
Right.
But the kids who really dig their heels in are like, hey, I want to get really good on the violin. Those kids excel.
Right.
Usually because they try and, scale back their other stuff,
It must be really gratifying to see some of your former students become music professionals.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
I always wanted so badly for I'm still in touch with some of my teachers, and we have great relationships. I always wanted my music teacher to see me touring and doing my thing, but
yeah,
and never. I think he passed.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely rewarding to see that. And we've had some students that have gone on to do, I had a student in high school marching band, this kid, John Rua, who he played in marching band. He played baritone. He was in the school musicals. I directed musicals at the middle school level. I did like 17 shows I directed, and which is a whole other beast. But like this kid John Rua went to college and then realized that he really wanted to get into choreography. Long story short, the kid ended up going on to doing. He was in the Heights. He was in the original cast of Hamilton.
Wow.
He's done so much stuff. Like so
awesome.
much stuff. Like, and it was a crazy example of, here was a kid who in high school, no one would have ever thought he would have been like that theater kid who was going to go off and go to Hollywood kind of thing. It just kind of like happened very organically. And then the kid turned out to be like the most visible person that ever came out of the high school.
Wow.
For him just being in Hamilton alone was like ridiculous. And he's a ridiculous choreographer. He's actually he's done choreography for Fish when they were at Madison Square Garden. Some years back, they did like this huge stage thing with like these like people were dressed up in different colors on the stage. If you look it up online, it was like this huge like theatrical thing he did. Like he choreographed all that. He's choreographed videos for like Coheed and Cambria.
Wow.
He's done some like really wild stuff. And he's a good dude. And it's funny too, because he is doing like this Broadway choreographer training video and all stuff. And he sent me a link a little while ago. He's like, yo, see, you got to check this out. So I watch it. He's wearing a Black 35 shirt and he's doing it. And I'm like, all right, that's cool.
Nice. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. Your kids occasionally steal your records. Have they shown any interest in picking up musical instruments as well?
Yeah, my daughter, I got 5 kids.
You're a busy guy.
I have 3. Yeah, it's like the punk rock Brady Bunch. But I have 3 kids and I have 2 stepkids. My one daughter, my daughter Allison, played clarinet through middle school, and like she kicked ass at it. She was really good. And then she got to high school and she was like, I just want to focus on sports. She's like, triathlete, that's what she does. And then I have twin boys who both play in band. My son Gavin plays drums and my other son Sean plays trombone. So they both play at the middle school level. And then my 2 stepkids, my stepson Ty plays in marching band, but unfortunately with COVID has been kind of squashed, and did percussion. And my stepdaughter Jessie, she doesn't do any band stuff, but she's like extremely creative when it comes to, writing and art and stuff. So they're all pretty well rounded. But my daughter Allison, to mess around a little bit on a guitar. She's like, you gotta make me a guitar. I made this guitar for a guy like some years back. She's like, Shanae, I need Shanae back. I'm like, I know. I was like, but someone bought that guitar. So we can make a new one. We can make a new Shanae. That's not a problem. So I still owe her one though.
Is trombone the hardest instrument?
The double reed instruments I would say are the hardest, and French horn. But double reed, like oboe, bassoon, that stuff is really hard.
Right.
But they're all hard in different ways.
Of course. So I didn't know this before until I read your bio, but you were building drums, right? And so and now, I really, this is our first meeting. I didn't know you from Adam. So, now it makes sense. And now I'm like, oh, of course he was building drums. So how did you get into building drums?
That is the great question. It's funny, as you know, I was like really into the marching stuff and drum corps. When I was younger, I guess I was probably like 21, 22, I guess. I was really into the marching stuff, and I was tired of going to like the local music stores, your Sam Ash, your Guitar Center. Actually, Guitar Centers weren't even in Jersey at that time, but going to like a store like Sam Ash and asking questions about like marching percussion equipment. I'd go in there asking about certain kinds of drumsticks or certain kind of drum heads. And these guys back there knew nothing,
Right, they're like, I got this beer cup holder that'll go on your hi-hat, bro.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, I got this Gibraltar beer holder. It's like that's what they knew, and they didn't know anything. And I remember one day very vividly, I came home from Sam Ash in Edison, New Jersey. And I came home. My mother worked for McCarter and English for about 25 years, which is a big law firm in New Jersey and Newark. And I came home and I said to my mom, I was like, hey, I'm going to start my own business. And she was like, all right. Like, why or what? And I said, I'm tired of going to stores. They don't know what I'm talking about. I'm going to just start my own thing. So then if people need this stuff, I could be that person who knows what they're talking about. She's like, all right. And I'm like, what do I need to do to become a business? And she did like all the paperwork and did everything for me. And I became like a little sole proprietorship. And the company was called Dark Horse Percussion. And Dark Horse came when I marched in the Crossman drum corps, because the corps and the drum line especially was kind of known as the dark horse of the circuit, because we were kind of a little bit more the ragtag, but we were like the badasses. And throughout the country, when we would tour, our field show opened up with a drum solo. There would be like this 10-second like silent drill going on. So 128 people, a silent drill, and then downbeat into this huge drum solo. And people throughout the country, we would have like the silent drill going on, and you would just hear from the crowd, from the rafters, you would just hear like, Dark Horse! And then downbeat would start. And it started catching on at shows. So the conductor would start us off, maybe silent, and you would just hear someone yell it in the crowd. And then all of a sudden, doom, 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 like we got into this thing. So I was like, my buddy Sean, who passed away, I miss dearly. Him and I were having some drinks one day. I haven't drank in 5 years, but him and I going way, way, way back. We were at this local bar called Sunnyfields, and we're sitting there. I was like, hey, I want to start this business. And I was like, I need a name. And he was like, call Dark Horse. I was like, okay, how about Dark Horse Percussion? He was like, boom. And he wrote me a check for $100 and gave me my first $100 to get the business off the ground. And I literally, my mother set me up as a actual sole proprietorship. And then I started calling companies to become a dealer for like various drumstick and head companies and cymbals and all stuff. And then for a while, I was selling all this marching and concert percussion equipment out of my parents' basement. Like basically I had a few storage racks filled with like drumsticks and heads and all stuff that was catered towards marching percussion, orchestral percussion. So I started the business that way. And then my father and I started messing around with like building some drums. I would get some shells from this company called Precision Drum in New York. And him and I would work on finishing them with different lacquers and varnishes and stuff, and then get the hardware and then start making these drums. And then that just kind of, what happened was it kind of shifted, because then over a few years, custom drums started becoming a lot more popular. And I just started building more of the drums. And then the company kind of changed where I was now building custom drums more than I was selling the other stuff. Right. I would build a drum set and throw it on eBay. And then someone would be like, hey, I saw you sold that. Would you make me another one? I'm like, okay. And then it just kind of grew. And I mean, long story short with that, like I just literally started going and going and going, and then eventually opened up. Over the years, I had like 4 different locations I did the business out of. I started from my parents' basement. And I ended up building drums I sold the business twice, but I ended up building drums for about 1,000 bands over 20 something years. That's and it was incredible. Crazy. I mean, I built drums for, the Bouncing Souls, the Gaslight Anthem, the Wonder Years, the Menzingers, Eminem, RX Bandits, Title Fight, Scandals. I mean, I built drums for so many, Streetlight Manifesto, for so many awesome dudes over those years.
Wow.
Kind of wild. It was wild.
Before you got into doing the full kits, did you also dive into any like marching hardware, like harnesses, or did you go down that road at all?
Yeah. I mean, I would sell, there was guys who I knew, because I knew so many guys within the instructor circuit, guys who were teaching other drum corps, other stuff. So I had a handful of drum corps and marching bands that would then come to me to order all their stuff. Like I remember for like Pearl, like the company Pearl, the drum company. Yeah. I want to open up with them as a dealer. And they're like, okay. And I always remember it. My rep for Pearl was this guy named Steve Chaka, who used to live up here, and then he was living down in Nashville. And I contacted Pearl, and I'm like, hey, I'm Anthony Cartinella. I own Dark Horse Percussion. I want to become a Pearl dealer. And they're like, well, to be a dealer, you got to open up with, it was like something like $8,000 worth of stuff.
Right.
And I'm like, well, I don't have that. Number one, I was like, what am I going to do with that? And I ended up having a friend of mine who just became a band director out in Pennsylvania at Upper Darby High School. And he reached out to me and he was like, hey, I got money. I need to get a full set of marching equipment. So he ended up ordering like $30,000 worth of marching percussion, orchestral keyboards, you name it, like the whole 9. So I was able to open up with Pearl that way.
Oh, that's great.
And it was wild when Steve the rep, he actually showed up to my parents' house. I'm down in my basement drumming or doing something. And the doorbell rings and I go upstairs and here's this guy standing out there with like a pearl windbreaker on and a little briefcase. And he's like kind of looking around like, he's like, is this Dark Horse Percussion? And I'm like, yep. I was like, are you Steve? He's like, yeah. And he kind of chuckled. And then I was like, oh, come on in. So I brought him down to my parents' basement. And here are these 2-3 racks filled with sticks and mallets and heads and stuff. And he's kind of laughing. He was like, wait a minute. So this is Dark Horse Percussion. I was like, the one and only. And he was like, all right. He's like, all right. So, and he was like, so what are you doing? And I explained everything to him and he pulled out like the contract agreement and everything. And I filled out everything. And he was just like, all right, well, you have to open up with X amount of dollars. So you'll be official once it opens up. And then just a few weeks later is when I closed that deal. And then, I was a Pearl dealer for quite a while.
Did you ever
have my parents' basement?
And you never had a retail location?
No, I had about a 3,000 square foot facility in Kenilworth. It's funny. I had a storefront in Westfield, New Jersey, which was awesome, that I primarily used as a workshop. And the front I had kind of as a showroom, but it was never like a 9 to 5, like open door, kind of shop,
What a crazy niche market, and what a perfect scenario. Like, this is a world traveling around, competing, you're meeting all these people, and then it's great. It's great when you can sell things to your competitors.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. I mean, it was definitely interesting, and I've always been into business. And I did Dark Horse for a long time. The company was growing at a really high rate. I sold it one time to two guys. One of them was my buddy John, who was he was a student of mine, who was also like my right-hand man when it came to building. And the other guy was Chris Thatcher, who plays drums in Streetlight Manifesto. So they bought the business, and they hit some ups and downs, and John ended up leaving, and then Chris took over, and he kept it going for a number of years. But they kind of lost sight of the idea of, like, I was trying to tell them, it's like, I'm getting out because I can't be a full-time teacher and do this full-time. And I would have a lot of guys say to me, it's like, well, why don't you do Dark Horse full-time? And I'm like, why? It's pretty simple. It's like, I have kids and a family. I can't afford a slow month.
Right.
I can't like I got bills to pay and obligations. Like, I can't afford to have a slow month. On the side, fine. But the business was growing at such a level that I couldn't keep up with it. And that's the worst place to be, because you're in such a tough spot to be like, money in, money out. You're trying to come up with more hours to build stuff. It was tough. So I sold it to them for them to do it like their full-time job. And they just kind of didn't get it. They didn't realize what it really required. And some more years down the road is when I took the business back over. Chris was running the business, and he got to the point where, and he's a phenomenal drummer and educator. And he got to the point where he was like, I just don't want to do this anymore. He's like, I hate business. He's like, I love drums. I love teaching drums. And it's the reality. I mean, it's funny, like Adam with Satellite. I mean, like, him and I have had that discussion before. Like,
That's
business
tough.
isn't for everyone. When it's raining, we're all getting wet. And when it's dry, like, you're stuck in that too, and it's a tough place to be when you're trying to get so much done, and I know Chris came to me. He was like, I just hate business. Like, I come into the shop and I don't want to do this. This sucks. People are hounding me. Where are my orders? I don't have money. I don't have this. I don't have that, and I was at a different stage of my life where I was like, all right, well, you owe me like 6 months left on my settlement. I was like, how about we wipe that away and I'll just take the business over. And after some, legalese and negotiating, did some things, I took the business back over for a couple of years, brought in two other buddies of mine. And then what happened was then I kind of got back in that same rut. where I was
Right.
like, I'm still the guy doing everything. I got partners. I'm still the guy doing everything. And this is not cool. So I got to the point where I was like, I'm done. I'm out, and long story short, ended up one of my partners at the time ended up taking over the business, who's running it today, and he's doing a good job of it. I still
It's
like
still
trying to,
going.
I still consult for him, for them. I still do some building here and there, on occasion, probably like every 2 months or so. He'll be in a pinch. It's like, hey, can you come in, lay out these drums or wrap this or wrap that? It's like, yeah, no problem. Because the shop is literally like 10 minutes from my house.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
I could go there and take care of stuff.
You are a busy guy.
Yeah, I am. And then there's Black 35.
Yeah, man. And so, what kind of a window was there between leaving leaving the last time from Dark Horse and starting to build guitars? Like, were you messing around with building guitars while you were building drums?
Yeah, you know what? When I probably over the course of like the last like 5 or 6 months of doing Dark Horse, prior to that, probably let's say 10 years prior to that, I started getting into guitar. Really into like just gear, and I'd go through phases, and I really started like just digging into it a little bit more. But I had a lot of resources a lot of connections that I could get parts, that I could get, bodies cut, CNC'd, that I could do this, I could do that. And then what happened was, it was probably like my last 6 months or so of Dark Horse. And I was just not in a good place. I was extremely, at that time, very upset and very, just broken with my job. I was teaching elementary school. I didn't want to teach elementary school. The whole teaching thing for me that year was just like really rough on me. I just didn't want to do it. And then dealing with a business that I'm trying to keep up, it was like so much stress and anxiety, and it was just really rough. And I hit this point that time that probably around that August, I was like, I need to make some changes. And I gave up drinking altogether. I'm like, Jack Daniels, I'm done. It's like, I'm done with all that stuff, and I quit
Good for
drinking.
you. I don't drink either.
Yeah. And I gave it up, and I drank for years. I mean, it was my, people have ice cream at the end of the night. I'd be like, I want my Jack on the rocks. It's what I would do, and I got to the point where like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I think dealing with like stress and anxiety, and then the wonderful world of booze trying to mask some of that, and the stress and anxiety and the problems are still there. I was like, I need to make a change. And I literally stopped drinking. And then I finally started, I was like, all right, we got to get on a path to change the business a bit. And I was like, I'm going to sell it again. I'm going to put it out there to another custom company, or, sell it to someone else. But over that window of time, I kind of got like revitalized, where I'm like, I'm done with business. I don't want to do business anymore. Even though it's in my blood, it's like, I don't want to do it anymore. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to build guitars. But the initial intent of Black 35 was never to be a new guitar builder. It was supposed to be like, hey, I got some ideas. It's like, hey, I can have my buddy cut this Explorer, and I could get this neck from this guy, and I want to build this, and let me work on figuring out how to do this. And I'm going to bring the body to my friend, who's going to wood burn some cool stuff on it, and I'm going to make it for fun for myself. And that's what I started doing. I literally built a handful of guitars, and then started like a big cartel page and an Instagram account just to put it out there. And back then I was like making stuff to be like, I'll sell the guitar for like $1,000, $800. Like, I was doing it solely for, it was therapeutic for me. Cause I'm like, this is relieving my anxiety. This is kind of revitalizing me. Now I'm at a point where the business, I've changed hands with Dark Horse. I'm done with business. Now I'm just making guitars for fun. And I just dove right into it for fun. But then as luck would have it, it ended up becoming one of the best business ventures I've ever done, because then it spawned,
Right.
and it grew. And that was just wild, because this month right now, I started Black 35 4 years ago, and I've built now to date about 800 guitars.
Wow.
And for some awesome players too. But like back then, it was like literally just stuff that I wanted to make, I was making. And that was it. And it just kind of grew and it went. And, I mean, it's a learning curve. I've made some mistakes. I've learned how to fix a lot of things. You learn what to do and what not to do. It's like when you first started doing podcasts, you look back on what you did then as opposed to how you handle stuff now. I'm sure you look back on it like, oh man, I get it now.
I still don't know a thing. I'm still a dipshit.
And but you're always learning. You're always learning
sure.
something new, and, Black 35 was so funny because it was like meant to be. I came up with a name in like a heartbeat. It was like, boom, that's what I'm going to call it. That's it. And it was
there
like
anything behind it?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny what it was on my old website. I had it on there, but Black 35 is roulette. That's all it is.
Right.
35 is my favorite number. That was Mike Richter, who played goal on the New York Rangers. So my favorite hockey team. Richter was 35. I love roulette, and Black 35 is my favorite number on the roulette board. So I literally was like, I'm going to call it Black 35. And my logo is going to be a poker chip with 35 in it. That's what it was.
Perfect. And let me ask you this. Let me pump the brakes for a second.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself playing more roulette now that you don't drink?
I haven't, you know what? I could count on one hand how many times I've played roulette in the last like 5 years.
Okay.
Good. I definitely would like to play again, but not in the current COVID situation.
Sometimes we will substitute, you know.
No. I mean, definitely. You know what? I feel that my addictive personality got more channeled into a lot more positive things in my life. As far as like being organized, being creative, being like moving a lot of, taking care of business, and just like really, really, really work and, hard. I was never in a position where it's like, oh, I'm like drinking so much, I'm blacking out and I don't remember this. I was like, never like that. It was just one of those things where I realized for myself personally, it's like,
it doesn't sound like you had enough time to fucking drink.
Yeah.
To black out.
Yeah, I know. And, I got to that point where I was like, I just felt that it wasn't bringing a positive vibe to my life. It wasn't helping me in any way, and I'm a very, all or nothing kind of person. So like, I can't just have one of those. I got to have 5 of those, I mean, cause that's just who I am with everything really, and, it's tough, but it was funny. I mean, I literally stopped that. And then it was great because like I gave up drinking. Dark Horse was being sold. I went back to teaching at the middle school level, which I loved. So it was like everything was on an upswing. And I'm like, I'm done with business. I just want to be a father and a dad and not worry about business anymore. And, my late nights of, hey, I kissed my kids goodnight and now I'm off to the shop until 2:00 in the morning. I was like, I don't want to do it anymore. And then Black 35 turned into this awesome business, but it had all the elements that I really needed, where I didn't have to do those late nights. I didn't have to do that. It's a lot more focused. As cool as the company is and as great as it's gotten to where it is, I have it so much more manageable what it is, and balance is key,
Yeah, man. You mentioned that you had a friend CNC the body out, which so have you bought a CNC or are you still having, you did?
Oh, no. I didn't buy a CNC machine. Oh, yeah. I thought there was a period of time that I was thinking about doing it, but I have 3 guys who I work with who I get anything that I work pretty much hand in hand with to get whatever I need.
Yeah.
So if I need a body or a neck, like these are guys who could do the stuff for me because they have the equipment. The problem with CNC stuff is you spend all this money for the machine, and then it's like the knowledge base of programming is a totally different beast.
I hear this story over and over and over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and it's so hard because you could be like, hey, I just spent $30,000 and I bought this machine and I don't know how to use it. And then it's like trying to program stuff. And that's why, like, I have got, there's the expression work smarter, not harder.
I love that saying.
And I can email one of my guys and be like, hey, man, I need one of these. They know what I do.
Yeah.
They know what my bodies look like. They know this, they know that. Just like any of the big companies, like a Gibson or a Fender, like they're cutting this on CNC machines. They push a button, it's programmed, it goes, and then what I do with my guitars beyond that is just like my own taste and flavor.
And so are you able to work out of a space at home? Do you have space at home where you can work on these things and finish these guitars?
Yeah. Well, what's funny is I have, my paint booth area is basically by the Dark Horse shop. And so I could do all finishing there, like as far as paint work. The funny thing is for myself, as far as the actual building of the guitars, the building, the wiring, the setup, all that stuff, I do it all at home.
Right.
Which is crazy. Because
so,
I have a lot of guys. It's like, dude, like you're Black 35. And it's like, yeah, I have 2 workshops in my home that I work in. I have a workspace in my garage, and then I have a workspace in my little basement room.
I mean, the great thing is right there, you don't have this giant workspace. I mean, a guitar takes up a lot less space than a drum kit.
Absolutely.
Physically, right? And so just to finish a drum kit, you just require so much more space. So you have to rent a space or own a building, and like to get out from underneath that expense.
Yep.
You're already set up for a clearer path to success, right? I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things that really brought that balance to me working on guitars, because I have a workshop. I have like my little man cave, which I'm in right now. I have a walk-in closet that I converted to basically, it looks like if you were backstage at a show where your tech would be set up.
Got it.
That I could do. I'm there and I'm doing all the wiring, I'm soldering, I do all my other stuff. Boom. I have the garage I use for like more messy things or sanding or whatever. And then I have 2 other places that I can use to do any kind of paint work. And then I have my other guys that do CNC work for me. So I have it in a way that, number one, I pay virtually no overhead. And number 2, I can work from home, where it's nice because if my kids are home, my wife's home, like doing stuff, like I could go downstairs for 2 hours and work and go upstairs and like, I'm here. I'm not leaving the house to do work.
No, that's
great. And that's always been good. And I think that's a big thing too, why so many guys like working with me, because it's the same model I had with Dark Horse that I had with Black 35. And it's, I treat everyone the same, whether I'm building a guitar for like Frank Iero from IChem or Rich Fortis from Guns N' Roses, or if I'm building it for just a 16-year-old kid who's been saving money to buy one of my juniors, like I treat them all the same. Like I'm going to give them the same quality, the same attention, they email me or text me, I'm going to write back to them, and I think a lot of guys really appreciate that. And being that I do everything I do in a very DIY fashion, folks can appreciate that if you email Black 35, like that's me. Like I handle your money and I handle building your guitar. So, and I handle shipping it. So like I'm the dude. It's not like you're calling a company and you don't even know who you're talking to. They don't know who you are. If you're talking to me, it's me,
Do you foresee a time when you are at the end of your your teaching run and you're ready to retire? I mean, I don't. How many years do you have to teach before you can retire? Is there a teachers union?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. There's a union. There's for my pension, stuff like that. For where I am, I'm 45. Technically, if I want to retire, I could retire at 55 if I want to. But again, with 5 kids and college and whatever kind of marriages and stuff like that, I mean, realistically, I'm probably going to work at least another 12 years.
You also don't seem like the kind of guy that wants to sit on his hands.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do that. I mean, because my mind already goes to, if I retire, I want to open up a coffee shop.
You're going to get into roasting coffee?
Dude, I've said it for years. In my mind, my concept that I pitch to people is I want to open up a coffee house, like the old coffee houses that used to be around for me, like in New Brunswick and Metuchen, some of these places, where rather than the coffee house having books everywhere for people to read, having like guitars hanging up. So you could get your coffee and a donut and you could take a guitar off the wall and strum for 20 minutes, drink your coffee and leave and put it back. So I'm always like, that's what I want to do. But who knows?
I'm always trying to fantasize a way to open a boutique guitar shop / coffee shop.
Oh man, we'll have to keep talking about it.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, man. I mean, I love it, but yeah, I mean, I never sit still. I'm always working on something. Even with this month, like I literally just launched a couple weeks ago. I'm doing custom pedal boards now.
I saw that.
And guys have been eating it up. And what's cool is it was one of those things, like I made something for fun and I'm like, you know what, let me crack some eggs and make some cakes here and figure out what I could do. And next thing you know, I launched these pedal boards and guys are just really digging into them because I'm making these pedal boards. They're made by hand. They're made by me. I finish them by me. Everything is done by me and I keep them affordable. And they have the same vibe and persona as the guitars that I make.
Right.
And they have the same look and style because I never use the word relicking. I never use that. I've always used the term like distressing. Even with Dark Horse, 15, 20 years ago, I was making distressed drums where I would have a customer say, hey man, I want to have this drum set look like it fell off a pirate ship. Or it looks like 100-year-old furniture. Long before anyone used the term, road worn, relic, blah, 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 like any of those things. Like my thing is like, I like beat the guitars up in a way that are, some guys could look at them like, well, it looks relic, but if that was a real 68, it wouldn't be worn there. I'm like, I'm not trying to do that. You know what I mean? I look at the guitar and I'm like paint, like, I want to take some off here. I want to do this, do that. Boom, done. And guys, overall, I've had a pretty good track record, and guys like dig into it.
Yeah, people have a funny reaction to altered finishes, right?
Yeah, you know what? It's funny because the guys who, like, I have guys who order new stuff every week. And they're like, this is what I want. And every once in a while I have guys like, hey, I just want like a light relicking or light distressing. It's like, okay. And then I have other guys who are like, hey man, I want one of your guitars, your choice of color, and you could beat it to shit. And I'm like, all right, you have to ask me twice.
Drag it behind your car.
Yeah. But it's funny because, when you deal with, luckily I very, very rarely now like ever deal with like the keyboard commandos, but you could see some of the stuff out there. You got these guys that just rag on companies when they kind of relicking or, oh man, it's ridiculous. It's like you get these guys that just sit in their grandmother's basement in their underwear behind their computers or phones.
Yeah.
And they know everything about everything. And if you ask them, they'll tell you, that pedal company sucks.
They'll tell you if you don't ask.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny because you get these guys that just think they know everything about everything. You know what? If you don't like JHS pedals, you want to rag on Josh because you think they're overpriced and your buddy next door makes pedals for $15, don't buy one. If you don't like
Save
how
your allowance, buy the 15.
yeah, I mean, you don't like that. You don't like how Bill Nash relics his Nash guitars or whatever. Don't buy one. You know what I mean? Like they'd rather sit there and be like, "Oh, these guys sell this stuff, blah 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 blah," and I'm like, who cares? Why are you putting energy into that? It's like it's so funny how guys get so wrapped up in it, and like you said, you get these guys who just talk about it. It's like they don't like the altered finish and they don't like the relicing, blah blah blah. So don't buy it. Get your own.
It's peculiar that it's almost exclusively guys that have to be authorities on all this, and typically women are take it or leave it. They're just like, that's not for me. Whatever. I'm not gonna sit here and take pot shots at it.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot more women who look at guitars like, "Ooh, that's a pretty finish,"
right. Or
like, "I love doing bursts and stuff like that." It's like, "Wow, that looks really cool!" Like that color, that finish, that kind of stuff. I deal with like a really broad spectrum of players and their tastes and their interests, and I also have a number of guys who are like, they're just like faithful disciples. Like some guys out there, like they got 3-4 guitars that I've made.
That's great.
They're constantly thinking of something new, and they like the idea again that like I'm the guy who does all the work, and I'll work with them on pricing. My pricing is very reasonable. It's not fire sale cheap, but it's not like, holy cow, how am I going to do that? You know what I mean? And I think guys like coming up with like just new ideas and be like, "Hey, Ant, what do you think of this? I'm thinking about doing like a V with a Bigsby and blah, blah, blah." I'm like, "I'm hip. Let's do it." He's like, "All right, I'll Venmo you $500 now deposit." I'm like, "All right, cool." And then we'll work with it, and it's nice.
Have you been contacted by any particular company in the last year or two about
oh, the Pray Authentic?
That's
what I said to Adam. I told Adam I want to do how he has the whatchamacallit, like the actual legal document. Like I told him, I was like, I want to put that on a t-shirt. And I was like, you gotta start a new hashtag too. It's gotta say "Pray Authentic," like praying on people.
Right.
No one has ever contacted me, and it's funny too, because I built a pretty rad junior for Rich Fortis. It was really sad last year because last March or end of February, I was super stoked because I built 2 killer juniors, one for Rich Fortis to go out with Guns N' Roses, one for Frank Iero to do the My Chemical Romance reunion tour. I sent both these guitars out to California. Both of them loved the guitars. Both of them dug in pre-production. Frank and the band ended up coming home. Rich did one show in Mexico City.
Yeah.
Used the junior on 4 songs, and then everything shut down.
And they were supposed to play in New York too.
Yep. They were supposed to play a Giant Stadium, and they were supposed to play in Philly.
I was like,
it was so bad.
I was going to see him either. I was probably going to go to Boston. It's closer and easier for me at this point.
Yeah, it was. But the point, to answer your question, I'm sorry, like my ADD kicks in. I go off on tangents.
That's what.
But as far as like any other quote unquote bigger company say anything, when Rich was going to post the picture of the junior, he said to me, he's like, "I'm going to post the picture. I love the guitar. It's rad." He gave me a really nice, on my website, actually, he wrote a really nice thing on it. Testimonials right on the homepage. And he was like, "But I'm just giving you a heads up. There's a very good chance I'm going to post this and you're going to hear from the big company."
Yeah.
He was like, "Are you okay with that?" And I'm like, and I texted Adam and I'm like, "Hey, Fortis just said this to me. What do you think?" And Adam was like, "Fuck him. Post it." Yeah, I mean, like, what are you going to do? So he posted it. I've never heard anything.
Right.
And at the end of the day, you know what? They could kick rocks, because not saying that I don't like the history and everything like that. I don't have a problem with that. I'm not going to bash them with that kind of stuff. I have a problem with what they did, what they are currently doing with my buddy Adam. I think Adam is like my soulmate and he's an awesome dude. And I think it's crap because what's black and white is black and white. The dude has a piece of paper that says, I own this name. I bought it. You snooze, you lose years ago. And now you're going to try and muscle me? Piss off. Go kick rocks, and then
everything, as they say, everything's for sale.
Yeah. It's like here, you have the name, you can't say that. And then trying to say, oh, you got to stop doing this with what I do. Kind of the loophole that I have is my stuff. Number one, isn't identical. And number two, what a lot of companies get in a lot of heat with that have gotten like heat is when they start using names that are trademarked. Like I don't call any of my stuff a Les Paul,
right?
You know what I mean? I don't call it this, I don't call it a Telecaster. I don't do any of that stuff. Especially with the big Gibson stuff, because that's where companies get in trouble. If I turn around, hey, it's a Black 35 Les Paul, that's a problem, and they could do something. At the end of the day, what could they really do? Hey, stop doing this. It's like, what are you going to do? I make one-off guitars. They're not identical. My headstock is different. My logo is different. I don't call it it. What are you going to tell me to do?
Right.
I'm not mass producing them. I'm not, hey, I had, in Taiwan, I just had 500 of these and they look identical to your SGs. Like, that's a different story. But when I'm like essentially handcrafting each one of these guitars and they all look a little different because I make sure that all my stuff is just a little bit different.
Sure.
Like no two of them are identical. They're always going to be a little bit
anyway, right?
What's up?
Unless a machine was doing all the finishing, it's impossible.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to do it. Even with CNC stuff, I mean, you get different weights. You can have two slabs of mahogany. One's weighing 8.9, one weighs 7.9. Right. They're both slabs of mahogany. They can have like minor things, but yeah, I've never had any problems with that. And with a company like Fender, they got smart years ago. Because they're like, hey, you know what? These companies want to try and rip us off. Let's just sell licensed parts and make more money.
Right.
And that's what they do.
Does the ambitious businessman in you ever think, I'm going to come up with a design that is not based on a classic, or that is even for that matter, and then do a run overseas, like in Korea or Indonesia? And
you know what? I wouldn't do it. I've been approached about doing some stuff that way. There's a couple of companies out there. It's funny because when I built drums for 20 years, everything was so cutthroat. Drum company to drum company, everyone hated each other. Everyone was like fighting to get, other players and other things. With guitars, when I started doing it, the amount of free shit that I've gotten over the years and trades from guys has been ridiculous. Amp companies, pedal companies, cable companies, strap companies. It's amazing. Like guitar companies in general, it's like a brotherhood. And I think the big thing with that is it's because your average guitar player, let's say, has 5 guitars. There's a good chance all 5 guitars are different brands, different styles. It's not like a drummer where it's like, I play a Pearl kit. It's like, no, they got the stuff. And I think that also helps too. Like I'm one guy. Sometimes it takes me longer to get stuff done. Sometimes things take forever. Sometimes things are done in 3 weeks. And I think that's what makes guitar players also very patient, because I have a lot of guys who are like, hey man, when it's done, it's done. Like I have a guy right now I'm building a guitar for. He's like, dude, when you're done, you're done. The guy has 35 other guitars. Like he's not hurting for this one guitar. He wants it, yes, but he's not like dying for it. But as far as like doing like the mass produced kind of line, I just wouldn't want to do it because it takes away from the integrity of what I do. Like guys come to me because I'm the brand. Like I have a certain persona and look and vibe of my company. My photos look a certain way. I don't take myself too seriously a lot of times. I do fun merch. I always mix it up. And like guys like that. And I think if I just slapped a big old sticker on it and then people are like, oh, this is cool, but it's, you know, it's mass produced in Japan and it's only $3.99, you know, I think some guys may like that idea. And then other guys may be like, well, why would I buy that? You know, especially some of these companies that have stuff made overseas where you have these factories over there that are just like assembly lines of like producing mass produced guitars for like 5 companies on the same assembly line. You know, they're just going around getting all spray painted. They're all getting painted. Same thing with drum companies. You know, I just wouldn't want to do it. You know?
Yeah. I think, I know a lot of folks, you know, you can do runs of, and you'd be hard pressed to be able to get a guitar down to $3.99. I think you know,
yeah.
Some of the like the big companies can get away with it just because they're ordering so many guitars.
Sure,
but I think
the volume.
I think that you can do as few as like 20 guitars. I always thought it was 50 to do a run, you know, but I think you can do as low as 20. But I know some people who do it to really great effect. It's yeah. But I mean, I appreciate what you're doing. I think it's really cool. I think it's great.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
and it keeps you busier.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I wouldn't like totally take off the table.
Yeah.
But at this stage of the game, I like the idea of doing it. As orders come in, I work on those orders for that guy. You know, you come to me, hey man, I want to order this guitar. Cool, man. I'm going to work with you on this guitar, as opposed to just being like, hey, you want that guitar? Here you go. And it's done already. It like kind of loses a little bit of that, you know, not saying it's bad, but right now I don't want to do it. Plus everything too is when you look at some of the financial side of it, just like we were talking before about a CNC machine. It's like, oh yeah, just get your own CNC machine. It's like, dude, this machine is $40,000.
Yeah, man.
I got to sell a lot of guitars to pay for this. I need somewhere to store it, somewhere to power it, someone to program it, someone to upkeep it, and someone to run it and know who could take care of it when it breaks down.
Buddy, wait till you go to buy your coffee equipment. I work in the coffee industry. That shit is expensive.
Yeah, I believe it. You know, and it's tough. You know, and that's why I like the level that I'm at. And I think one of the things that really helps me too, I'm able to work with guys in a very personal way, especially. I mean, at the end of the day, for a lot of guys, you know, money is money, you know, and I'm a one-man operation. I'm in a position that I could work with you on a guitar and be like, all right, this guitar is $1,900. I like to do 50% down to get in the books, and the balance is due 30 days prior to it being all done. But if you need something a little bit more flexible, I'm willing to work with you on that. So what works for you? And then I'll have a guy. It's like, well, I could put $400 down today and I could pay you like $200 every 3 weeks until it's paid off. Okay. And then I'm able to work with guys that way.
Yeah.
Because I think the big thing is like my regular job is like, I'm a teacher. Like I've been teaching 22 years and I have 2 master's degrees. Like that's truly my bread and butter. That's my benefits. That's my pension. That's, you know, top of my salary guide. I'm fine there. So then I could work with guys on a very personal level to help them. And I can't tell you how many guys have thanked me who've like finally gotten their guitars that have written me letters and notes and texts and be like, dude, thank you so very much. Like guys who are like in like such shitty places, guys who are like scrounging up money, you know, $100 here, $80 there. And it's like, thank you for working with me. Like you took time to like really help me through the process. And then the end result is still here.
That's great.
You know, and that's something I definitely take a lot of pride in, you know?
That's great. That's good. I mean, if you didn't have a day gig, that would be a lot tougher thing for you to accommodate.
Oh, absolutely. Like I wouldn't, and that's when it all changes. That's when the playing field changes.
Right.
Because if I did Black 35 full time, I would be definitely more productive. I would definitely have stuff done faster. However, I'd be like, boom, 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 done, done, done. And now I'm like, okay, I'm waiting for a new order to come in. And I would never want to be in that position because, I've seen it with Black 35. I've seen it with Dark Horse. You can have a very busy month and then you could have a very, very slow month. Yeah. And, it's like, if that's your livelihood, you can't afford to have those slow months.
Do you do the guitar shows when they happen?
I haven't. I've been asked to do a couple of them.
You just, I think you just paused, muted yourself. Are you unplugged? No? When you went to cover your mouth, I think you bumped the microphone. It must have, still quiet. Still nada. There we are.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, I took it off. I was wearing my kids like Xbox, like gamer thing. I'm sorry. What was your question?
It was about the shows.
Oh yeah. I've been asked to do a few of the shows. I really haven't. But I did 2 NAMM shows. I did a summer NAMM. I did a winter NAMM. But the local shows I really haven't done, just because when I would go to them, the amount of, I hate to say it, but just the amount of tire kickers that would hit some of those shows.
Yeah, sure.
Like, I'm going to take all this time to set up for like these dudes to like squawk and nickel and dime over stuff. Like, because I would do the same. I would go to those shows and I'd find the guy has some stuff. And how much you want for that? Oh, I want $1,500. I was like, how about 12? I'll give you 12 right now. Like, I don't want to be on the receiving end of that.
Right.
Even when I did the NAMM shows, I mean, I probably right now, well, obviously not doing anything now. I may or may not do another one. I did a summer NAMM show when I first started. It was actually my first year doing it, and I did summer NAMM, and it went really well. And then that following
winter,
you
bought a little booth.
Yeah.
Were you downstairs?
Summer NAMM, I was in the main floor, and I did winter NAMM in Anaheim, and I was on the main floor, right in the heart of like Chapman guitars, K-line guitars, yeah. Victoria amps. I was right there.
Dang. That's a spendy trip to make. That's ballsy. I like that.
It was. It definitely was. I was like, hey, I'm going to do this, and I think that kind of stuff was kind of like, for Dick Swing, to be like, all right, I did an amp show. I'm not just, some dude with, trying to say I make guitars. Like, I was legitimately there. I had, I got great pictures of it. It was an awesome booth. I had 2 interviews done there. Guys were really into it. The vibe of the booth was really cool. Would I do it again? I probably wouldn't do it again because, at the end of the day, that trip probably cost me about $15,000.
Right.
Between my booth, everything in my booth, renting the booth, flying there, freighting my coffin of gear out there, getting it back. It was probably $15,000. And at the end of the day, NAMM is your company executives' party weekend. They're walking around, they got the sandwich, they got their cocktail, and they're looking at gear. And a lot of them are dealers. A lot of the companies that are set up there are looking for dealers, to sell their stuff. Hey, I'm a pedal company and I'm looking for 5 new dealers this weekend to pick up my pedals, whatever. Like, for me, I didn't want to do that. I want to just set up to be like, I'm here. I'm just this dude from Jersey that is a drummer that built drums, and I have my gear here. Check it out. I kind of like it, and guys kind of like it. You could talk shit about it. I don't care. It's here, Right. And it was like, that's what I wanted. I didn't want like dealers trying to do stuff, because I've dealt with dealers on a couple rare occasions. It's nothing but a headache, because like I sell my product at a cheap enough price, and then they want it even cheaper, and then I gotta be responsible for trying to coordinate stuff with them. I didn't want to do it. Like, right. I'm all about, I want to work with you on your instrument. That's what I want to do.
You want to work with the end user, not with the conduit of the retailer.
Yeah. Like, yeah. I didn't want to deal with that, so I was out there just for guys to see. And you know what? I was there. Every piece of my gear sold at NAMM. I picked up probably a dozen players after NAMM who met me there, who again was great because they got to meet me, talk to me. I had a lot of guys who were like, "Hey man, you were on my list. I follow you on Instagram and I love what you're doing." And they want to check stuff out. Or like, "Hey man, I heard this dude talking shit about your company. I want to come check it out." And then like, "Whoa, this is like really cool." And like, "Nice stuff," whatever. It's like, I put it all on Front Street, this is what it is.
Hey, let me ask you really quickly about the pedal boards, because we just kind of brushed over it. Yep. You have how many different standard sizes, and then plus the custom option?
Yeah, I did the cool Eddie Van Halen for Frank Iero.
I saw that,
which was really wild. What's cool is, before I tell you that stuff, the crazy story with that, I'm building Frank him and I talked a few months ago about doing a Eddie Van Halen style Jazzmaster Junior, which I'm working on. It's going to be super rad. It's going to have a Floyd in it. It's going to have a P90. It's going to be really a hybrid kind of thing. So him and I talked about that. I told him about 6 weeks ago or 2 months ago, I'm like, "Hey man, I'm actually going to start doing these pedal boards." And he was like, "Super awesome. Would you make me whatever?" I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." And then we were talking about colors, and I'm like, "Let's make it like the guitar." He was like, "Damn, all right, cool, let's do it." I literally built it, painted it, finished it, sent him a picture of it. The next day, Eddie died.
Oh, Jesus. Right.
Like super wild. Like it was like super wild to like go through that. Like, holy shit. So that was kind of weird. So we kind of joked around, like Frank and I had dinner last week or something like that, downtown Red Bank. And he was like, do you think we killed Eddie?" I'm like, "I don't know." I was like, I think he really liked it. It was like such a cool thing.
That's one of those things when that headline popped up on my phone alert,
Yeah.
It was, it just like I just sunk, my heart sunk.
It was brutal. Like it really was. And for, it was crazy though, that like literally the day before here, we are doing this, like this would be a rad tribute to him.
Right.
When he was alive. I mean, he was alive. And it's like, we did this thing. It's like, that's badass. And next day he died was just like, oh man. Like I remember like Frank texted me. He's like, "Oh shit, did you like see this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's wild."
I think his influence on design and guitars and every facet of guitars and rock music is timeless. It'll never die. He's like Jimi Hendrix in that way.
Yeah. And you know what I always liked, and like I was never a huge Van Halen fan. I was never I saw someone tweet something that said like, I was never a huge Van Halen fan, but I will say I can't hear a song from them and not think about like a dog wearing sunglasses on a beach looking at a girl in a bikini. And I'm like, I read it and I was like, that's spot on. It was just like amazing. But I mean, for Eddie as a guitar player, I mean, just like a phenom. And it's crazy because I get a lot of parts from Floyd Rose, is literally like 20 minutes from my house. And they sell other parts too.
Right.
But they have like so much like Eddie, like memorabilia and stuff like that. And, even like what he did with like the Frankenstrat and everything. What I love about that was it was like here's this amazing guitar player creating sounds and an approach that no one ever saw, who this guitar was like this hodgepodge thrown together. He didn't have a boat of like 40 guitars. He had this thing that was like, he made.
No, dude, it was completely unprecious. There was absolutely nothing precious about it. It was just hacked up.
Yeah.
And there was like, the guitar to him, my impression, I never have read any interviews about him and his relationship with that guitar, but you can look at it and you can say, Well, that's just a tool to him. He doesn't really.
Yeah.
Like that could have been a 59 burst and he'd have done the same thing to it.
Sure.
Look at that Explorer. He like hacked up
Yeah.
and put,
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And it's crazy because with the Frankenstrat, you look at close-up pictures of it and just things that he did to it to just make it a tool. And I think there's a lot of those players out there that have done that kind of stuff. You get these guys that like, it always amazes me with guys who have like just like that like one guitar,
right.
you know? It's like that, like you'll see like a guy like Neil Young. It's like he'll have like this beat up Black Beauty with like a Bigsby, and it's like that's like his guitar. And like I know a lot of guys like very limited like what they actually
BB
bring
King
out with them.
I mean, there are players who are just known for that one, like BB King, Lonnie Mack, the Flying V with the Bigsby, right?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, you have these guys that just do it. And then what I also like is, guys who also just are all about like a guy like Jack White,
right.
Who's like really eclectic gear. And it's funny, I posted yesterday this one like lawsuit Les Paul that I have. It's like a 79 Greco. And I have had a lot of Les Pauls over the years. So many different year styles, you name it. And this thing is probably is in the top 3, hands down. And it's like this Japanese lawsuit guitar, and it's just awesome. But I posted yesterday because like to kind of prove a point, like you don't always need that big brand name on top of it. And it's funny because someone who I really admire, and I must have watched the rig rundowns for the dude like a dozen times, but what's his name? Dan Auerbach? Is that his last name? From the Black Keys.
Yeah.
You watch like his rig rundown and you watch him play live and stuff like that. And it was amazing because like you go through like his boat with his tech, and it's like almost all his gear he has is just like this hodgepodge, oddballs. It's like, here's this Ibanez lawsuit 3 pickup SG.
Yeah.
Here's like this random weird shape, a PV Razor, all this stuff. And it's funny, in the last rig rundown there, you go through all that stuff, and then the last guitar in his boat, 59 Les Paul. And he was like, and his tech is joking around. He was like, I'm telling you, he was like, this is a guitar that if we walked into a shop, he would just be like, I don't know. It's not weird enough, But it's so weird that like you'll have that variety of stuff, which I like.
I've always been a fan of the oddballs as well. Like I've never owned, oh no, that's not true. I've owned one Gibson Flying V, but I've owned 2, I owned an Ibanez and a Greco. I've owned a number of Grecos, and I love Grecos.
Yeah.
A Greco Firebird, Greco Les Paul, Greco Thunderbird.
Yeah.
They're great, man.
There's so many, and it's funny too, because there's like forums out there and websites and accounts that are like just dedicated to like guys who, collect them.
Right.
Like they came out of certain factories that were done by certain builders over there that are just like renowned. And I'm like, I think it's cool. Like it's like anything else. It's like collecting, whatever, but my ADD kicks in. But you originally asked before I started talking about the Black Keys, the pedal boards. What I'm basically offering, I mean, there's kind of like 7 models that I did that I kind of like figured out a way to like cut them different ways. Like everything from like a 13x7 all the way through like a 25x13 with like a slot
big,
for
substantial board, that big one, 25.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're super cool. Like I literally spent some time like figuring out some stuff, and I'm like super stoked on them, and guys who see them are like really, really into them. And I sent some out for some of my guys, like for Frank, I did the Van Halen board, which is super rad. And, just a fitting tribute to Eddie, and the guitar is going to be ridiculous. But I sent a board out to like for Rich Fortis, Ian Falls from Aquabats, James Bowman from Against Me, these dudes who I already work with. I'm like, yo, check this out. And everyone has just been like, that's awesome. And I think another thing that's cool too is I'm kind of the pricing of my pedal boards basically goes from like that's like $120 to like $250.
Yeah.
And I think what's nice about that is I feel it's a really good price point. Like they're handmade. I mean, they're handmade, they're awesome, they're rad, they're unique. It's something you wouldn't find, no two are alike. And I think another thing that's been really cool lately, I've had a number of guys order boards who have been Black 35 fans who are like, I'm still saving to buy this V I want you to make me. I'm not there yet, but I can afford to spend 180 on this pedal board now to kind of like get in the family.
Yeah, that's great.
You know, and I feel really good about that because I put myself in like myself when I was, let's say, 17 years old and I want to buy this drum set. It's like, you know what? Maybe you don't have enough money to buy this big double bass drum set, but how about like you could get like this snare drum at least that's going to go there. Right. It's like, all right, like I could kind of like get my foot in the door. And I think for a lot of these guys who are like, all right, cool, I'm going to save for my guitar. You're going to make me a junior, man. But in the meantime, can you do like a camouflage 17 by 13 board? It's like, yeah, why not? You know?
So I'm trying to remember there you have input and output jacks on the side and power on the side as well.
Yeah, what I did was I have electro sockets on each sides with cables to pancakes that I make. So you have an in and an out, and then I have a hole in the front with like kind of like a plastic covering that's like kind of like office furniture kind of stuff. It's just like a plastic covering that you can pull off, and you could run your cable in there for if you're putting a power supply in it.
Great, and and there's space underneath that top tier for your power supply.
Yeah, I've made them. It's funny because I have them made in a way that you could fit like the Dunlop ones. I love selling like the 8 ones because they're super low profile, but I have on my personal board, I have like a Voodoo Labs underneath and it fits fine.
Right.
I just throw it underneath. It's good to go.
Great. Oh, that's awesome. And what about traveling them?
It's funny. I made a case for a board for this dude, Bobby Mahoney. He's an awesome dude down here. I built him a guitar, a cool yellow Junior. And he was my first actual like customer. He's like, dude, I want one. So I hooked him up. So, I mean, he didn't pay full price, but I hooked him up. And he was like, can you make me like a case for it too? And I'm like, shit, why not? So I just kind of like used my woodworking skills. I'm like, all right, let me make this. And I made basically like this distressed black piece of luggage. I even put a bottle opener on the side of it for him. I just had some fun with it.
Yeah.
And it was a learning process because I was like, okay, I did this. Okay, cool. So if someone wants a case, no one has ordered a case for me yet, but if someone wants one, I'll like custom build them like a little case to put in if they want.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
But if they have existing pedal boards and this is replacing it, they probably have a case. You know, you have a case that's going to accommodate it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of guys have it, or a lot of guys will use something like in lieu of a case. But I'm interested to make some more of the cases because it was fun to do. I mean, I like challenging stuff. So like with his case, I'm like, all right, let me do this. But what's nice is like I literally made that case specifically for his board.
Oh, that's
and
great.
I wired up his board. I made the case for his board. And it's like, all right, this is kind of cool.
You wired his board up? Like he gave you his pedals and you
Yeah.
Oh, I love this.
Yeah, you know what? He had it and he's a local guy. And I was like, hey, let's do it right. And I'll send you a couple pictures of it.
Yeah,
and,
do. Yeah, that's awesome.
It was just another learning thing and a challenge to be like, all right, cool, this is fun, and I got done with everything and I'm like, all right, cool. Now I know what I would do differently next time.
Yeah.
Just like with guitars, I've done that over the last 4 years. Like I've learned things, what to do, what not to do. I mean, like you learn from your mistakes.
I'm gonna take a more serious look at those things. You might be hearing from me soon.
Dude, I'll take care of you. I'll definitely take care of you.
'Cause we already went over the fact that I have a music room here. It's a sloppy mess. But my pedal boards, they sit in cases like I have one under my bed and
yeah.
Now that I'm actually using real amps again, I'm not apartment living.
Yeah.
I've started using pedals again. Like everything was in the box before when I was living in the city. It's a drag.
Yeah, definitely. Just, outside of here, just hit me up. I'll definitely do it. And it's funny too with the with like the Eddie Van Halen stuff. I've made now I'm making 4 pedal boards. 3 of them I've made already. There were all guys who were like, dude, I need one of those. I
That's
made one for
awesome.
my buddy Nick, who does Wonder Effects down in out in Michigan. He did like a purple, black, and white one I made. Um, I did one for Protone Pedals, which is a black and yellow one. And
Nice.
I'm doing one for my buddy Kevin, who plays bass in Dropkick Murphys. He wants a little one that's just like blue, black, and white, but just kind of like the taped off, like Eddie thing. And I'm like, it's super cool. And even when Frank and I got together a little while ago, he was kind of laughing. He was like, this is really cool that this is kind of like turned into like your thing, because like guys are like, I never thought to do that,
Right.
and like I'm doing pedal boards now where I'm doing kind of like a fade or a burst kind of finish.
Right.
And guys are like, that's awesome. I never thought of doing that.
Right.
So it's kind of like I've taken like stuff from building drums and guitars and pedal boards and then put it all together and make it into something that's like kind of like this cool little piece of furniture. And what's nice too is they're made out of oak. They're all made out of 1/2 inch oak and everything. And a lot of guys at first like, oh man, is it super heavy? It was like, it's really not heavy at all because of where I have empty space where you could run your cables. The weight is like perfect.
They're great looking. And one thing that I appreciate that I've not had at my disposal with the fucking 20 pedal boards I've owned over the years is that you have the tiers that are
Yeah.
actual tiers. It's not an angled thing, which
Yeah.
is nice. But then, your volume or expression pedal slot sits flat,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
which for me that's kind of a big one because
Yeah.
I don't want to run I don't want to I don't want to operate that at an angle. And
Sure.
also when you do go to put it in a case, it sticks up much higher than everything else.
Yeah, it's really funny too. Like the design of the pedal boards, like I literally started off by kind of getting some wood and I'm like, let me figure this out. And it was kind of like, all right, cool. All right, cool. I want to do this. I want to do this. And then I finally got to a formula that I'm like, I got this nailed down to how I want it. And this works really well. It's like just the right size, just the right angles. If guys want an expression pedal, I figured I want to do it flat. I made one for myself that has space for 2 expression pedals. So it's like I have my Ernie Bolt, my volume pedal, and then I have my wah right next to it.
Right.
Pedals go the other way.
So before I forget,
Yeah.
when did you start playing guitar?
Don't.
And when did you find time to start playing guitar?
um, I was, like I said, when I was younger, I loved AC/DC. Even though I was always, drums was my thing. AC/DC with Angus and Malcolm, there was something that was always like, I always admired, but I never thought I could play it. And, I just really got into it. And I just started messing around, and then I started, buying gear, and I started buying guitars and selling guitars. And like middle of the night, I'm looking on Craigslist and, various websites and stuff. And I was constantly moving stuff, but also trying to figure out guitar, figuring out tone. And then like I was taking some lessons online, like little tutorial videos.
Yeah.
And then I would just start playing. I would have my guitar in school, and in between classes, I would pull up some tab or some YouTube video and be like, all right, cool. I want to learn how to play Back in Black. I want to learn this. I want to learn that. I want to learn how to play some like Social Distortion, and I just started messing around with that. And I tell guys, like, I'm like, I just want to be Malcolm. I just want to be like a solid rhythm player.
Right.
It's like the drummer in me. Like that's what it is. I'm not the soloist kind of stuff. I love bluesy stuff. And when I was in high school, what really Angus and Malcolm were there, but I would say even above them, what really, really started turning my head with guitar was Brian Setzer.
Oh, dude.
To this day,
Yeah.
he's just like, he's my bromance. I mean, he is just like what he could do, and his style and his approach is just like, oh man, just so good. So good. You know.
Classic guitarist, not a guitar player. I play. I'm a guitar owner, as Andrew McCaig would say, and he is a guitarist, right?
Yeah, so good. My wife and I went to go see him right in Red Bank at Count Basie. He was doing like his winter tour kind of stuff, like his holiday concerts, and we got to see him live there with his big band. And I love jazz, and I played in jazz ensembles and everything. And his big band was just shredding, like they were so good. And he covered "Let There Be Rock," and it was
really.
Oh yeah, it was stupid good. You could go on YouTube, look up Brian Setzer, "Let There Be Rock." It's badass.
Oh, that's
and his
amazing.
trumpet section just howls. They just howl.
Oh, wait a minute. So is there where is the amphitheater out there? Is that in Red Bank?
Yeah, Count Basie. Yeah.
Oh, so I've driven by there a lot of times going out to what is that beachy town south of you?
Asbury?
Yeah, going down there. Also going to Bell Labs. Have you ever been there?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh fuck, that building is incredible.
Yeah, right. It's huge.
Have you been in there since they redid everything?
No.
What the hell were you doing in there before they redid it? What was it? It was just like empty, wasn't it?
I don't even remember. I just remember originally hearing about it and then going by it, and that was about it.
Inside is one of the most amazing architectural, structural things I've ever seen. It's beautiful. Apparently, it's the size of the Empire State Building on its side.
Yeah, I think I heard that like online somewhere.
But of course, it's a little bit of a cricket scene right now. But a developer bought it and redid the whole thing. And there's like food courts in there. There's a hotel in there. There's all these shops in there. And then a bunch of city businesses rented space there that's much cheaper than, downtown high rises or whatever.
Yeah.
And you should go there, man. It's incredible. And there's great food to be had there.
That's always good. That's what I love about Red Bank. Our downtown has like the best eats.
Right.
You come down this way, we got to get some grub down here.
I most certainly will. Yesterday, I drove down to Maryland and back, but I didn't come anywhere close to you, really.
Damn.
That was a haul to Maryland and back. It was like a 14-hour day in the car. I got pulled over twice.
Oh, geez. What'd you go to Maryland for?
Go deliver some coffee and tea stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I love coffee. That was one of my ventures. I've done so many different things. I did coffee for a little bit. I was trying to sell. It was called Bold Will Hold, all that stuff.
It was
now I leave coffee for my buddy AC, who has his coffee company.
Oh yeah. I know AC. Cool. I talk to him a lot about coffee stuff.
Yeah, he's great. He's an awesome dude.
Yeah.
He's an awesome dude.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I did a limited run of coffee through him, I think earlier last year.
Nice.
Yeah, I did it was like License to Brew. It was like the Beastie Boys logo, and I did like a run of it. I did with him when he was with his old coffee company he was doing. So
yeah.
That's cool.
Nice.
But, yeah, I love coffee.
Yeah, when you're ready to look into that stuff, I'm happy to be an ear and help you out if you have questions.
We got to open up that. I'm telling you, boutique guitars and coffee. In my mind, I'm like, I'm gonna open up the coffee shop. It's gonna be called like the Capo. It'd be like Guitar Lounge and Java Bar. And people could come in, just take stuff down and play. That's what I think. It's retirement.
Careful. Make sure you don't have any of that cinnamon roll stink on your fingers when you grab this guitar.
This stuff all over.
Get your filthy paws off my $3,000 guitar. Get out of here.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, man, I've had a really great time talking with you. Well, I'm so happy and surprised to know that you're an educator, and again, I would say thank you for making that your life. Or let's not jump to conclusions. You have a lot of shit going on in your life.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot, but you know what? It always keeps me going.
Yeah.
Like, music in every form is, as cliche as it sounds. I mean, music is my passion. That's what I do. To be a music educator, to teach these kids. And then outside of that, I did Dark Horse for so many years, and then Black 35 with guitars, like so many different, avenues of my life all revolve around music. And, I just do everything I can to, give the most that I can, whether it's me talking to you about, like, let's just, shoot the shit about music, life, guitars, what's going on, or, someone who's struggling to, they need something positive in their life. And sometimes that album does it, trying to help them with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I try and bridge them all together in one way or another as best as I can. And I'm not perfect and I don't have all the answers, but you know what? I kind of wake up every day like I need to do my best today.
That's the way.
Yeah,
this is the way.
It is. Perfect.
Well, man, have a great night. And, you'll hear from me sooner than later.
Cool.
About
definitely check out some of that stuff. And for this, do you need me to send you like a picture or a couple pictures or anything?
I would love. You know what I would love? Do you have any? What's that?
A pedal board.
Well, yeah, I would love a pedal board. But you know what I'd love? Do you have any photos of you leading the band with your hand tattoos showing? Like at a school function in front of a school band? That would be incredible.
Normally I would be able to do that.
But then there'd be a bunch of kids
right now. Yeah.
What's that?
Being that we don't have any concerts right now,
right.
I wouldn't have that. I'll see if I have something, but I'll definitely dig up, I'll see what I can find. I have a few like decent pictures and stuff like that. I have my cool Satellite Amps t-shirt when I'm drinking coffee pictures. So that's kind of like my go-to.
Yeah, send me. You've seen the posters that I make for the podcast. So yeah, something that you think that would be appropriate for that would be great.
Sure. Yeah, I like using that one because that's kind of like my wife took that picture of me in Asbury Park right before we went to Summer NAMM that year.
Oh, nice.
Literally sitting there, and we went to Asbury and my motorcycle got a flat tire. So we were waiting for a tow truck for like hours and we're like literally sitting in this shop. She took a picture. So but yeah, I'll send you a couple of pictures with that. Yeah, definitely check out the pedal board stuff. I'll hook you up. Like whatever you want. You just let me know.
You're a good dude.
I try. I try.
Thanks for giving me so much time, man. I had really great time talking with you.
Hopefully I didn't ramble too much. I didn't go off on too many tangents. My ADD goes all over the place.
Look, man, my favorite guests are the ones that talk the most. Did I freeze up? Yeah. Look, if there's one person that can fuck this whole thing up, it's me. And the less I talk, the better.